So my name's Lauren Feldman. This mic is louder than I thought it was going to be. I want to welcome you to the afternoon session. I'm a product manager on the analytics team, and I'm going to be talking about how to use retention to drive monetization. So this morning, we talked a lot about player joy. Player joy is about the magic of your game, right? So the most important thing is to make your players happy. Because without happy players, you don't have any lifetime value. Because your players don't see value in your game. So Unity Analytics has really been focused on how to make tools that allow you to make your players happier. Players have a customer journey. We fight the path of this journey every day in the studio. And it's about acquiring the right users, giving them a really, really excellent first-time experience, getting them deeply engaged, having them grow their skill, and then having them connect with other players that play your game, having them engage in deeper mechanics, maybe having them watch ads, maybe having them get a reward, maybe having them make a purchase. They don't get to these later moments in the game without an excellent first-time experience. And I know everyone in this room, because I've talked to a lot of you, and I've been there, hates tutorials. Tutorials are like the worst thing in the world, right? So developers don't want to write them. Players don't want to play them. And everybody that you talk to will tell you that a tutorial in a game is a sign of what? Bad game design. But when you ask the same people, do you have a tutorial in your game? The answer is always yes. And the question is, like, well, why is that? And the reason is because the first-time experience is the most important experience that your players have. In fact, 60% of your players who come into your game after their very first session, after the very first day, will never come back to your game again. So let's think about that in terms of revenue. Let's think about that in terms of marketing budget. Let's say you spend $1 a head, right? You pay for 100 users. That's $100. Everybody can do that math. 60% of people don't come back. How much money is gone? $60, right. So a lot of money is gone. Like, you literally just put the money in the backyard, burn it, and watch it, and it dissipates. And the question is, how do we combat this problem? How do you create an onboarding experience that's special for a unique individual? And it's hard. And the reason is, everyone that comes to your game comes from a different place. Everyone that comes to your game comes from a different country. They come from different devices. They come from different ads. They come from different app stores. Everyone's expectations are different. And there's no way for you to create one experience that suits all of these personalized needs. And so Unity Analytics is introducing what we are calling Tutorial Manager. The Tutorial Manager is a toolkit and a decision engine that creates a personalized experience for a segment of one. So I want to talk about what a segment of one means for a minute, because I know a lot of you in here run A/B tests. So you create your tutorial, you run an A/B test, you see which tutorial works better, you go with that tutorial. Then you rinse, then you repeat, then you wait 2 weeks for it to be approved in the App Store, then you wait some more, then your funnel breaks, then you have to fix your analytics, then you have to go back to your spaghetti code, then you have to update your tutorial again. Meanwhile, what you really want to be doing is making new features, right? Keeping your players happy. So we created Tutorial Manager to simplify this entire process. And we have some very early customers, one of whom is Phil from Mighty Kingdom, and I want to bring him up here to talk about his experience using the Tutorial Manager. Let's give him a round of applause.
All right.
Do you want to give a little intro of yourself?
Yeah, sure thing. So Mighty Kingdom, we're a mobile app developer, a mobile game developer based down in Adelaide in Australia. We specialize in games for the kids market, and with a particular sort of niche of girls aged 6 to 9, which is a very specific market. And yeah, so tutorials for us are an incredibly important part of, like, within that demographic. We have the younger end of that demographic doesn't read, and quite often they don't have that sort of depth of experience of playing games, and so they don't have that the same sort of language that, say, that older end of that demographic has. And so for us, spaghetti code and the problems of tutorials are something that we face every day.
So what metrics do you use to track the success of your tutorial?
I think the simplest one we track is our day one retention. How many players who came in today come back tomorrow? That's like the most important part of your funnel, because the wider you can get your day one, that part of the funnel, then the better your day 7, day 30, day 180 looks. But we also look at session length as well, because we want to, the best tutorial sort of exposes the mechanics of the game very quickly to the user, and if they're engaging with that mechanic, then their session length will be longer than the tutorial length, basically. So those are the sort of two things that we focus on.
And how do you think the industry today is addressing all of these day one retention problems?
I'm not sure that there's any best practice solution out there. Tutorials on pretty much every game I've worked on has usually been the last thing that we've created once all the systems are in place. And it's usually the thing that's sort of thrown on top right at the end, just to make sure something's there, and so we can get the product out the door. And in our case with Shopkins World, which was our flagship title, it's sort of a mini game collection, so we're constantly adding new content to it to keep it fresh. Which means that we have to onboard people onto those new mini games, and so our tutorial just kept kind of growing and growing and growing, and that sort of the complexity of that code just sort of kept growing and growing as well. And there was really no sort of off-the-shelf solution that could come in and sort of manage that for us. So when we were approached to look at Tutorial Manager, it was a really easy decision for us to do that. We've been working with Unity since we started in 2010, and we've sort of grown as Unity has grown as well, and working directly with the Unity team, we knew that this would be a system that integrates with all the other parts of Unity we're already using. It would be very simple to implement, and yeah, so.
So what was like your first impression using the Tutorial Manager tool?
I think one of the things we realized very quickly is that it gave us the ability to test very quickly which. So the way we set it up, we created different versions of our tutorial, and we hooked it up with the Tutorial Manager very, very quickly. I think it took less than a day to get that running. And we were able to see live the results of those different tests, and we see which version of the tutorial people were engaging with. And we could make adjustments about how many users saw different versions just by adjusting it in the back end. So the results were very immediate, and previously, that process, as you described, has been a very long one. We do a lot of our tutorial testing on Google for that exact reason, because you can turn your things around very, very quickly. But again, Google users behave differently to iOS users, and so sometimes the results don't pan out. But with Tutorial Manager, we were able to make those adjustments almost in real time.
So I just want to talk a little bit about their specific use case and how they use Tutorial Manager. So essentially, there's one API call. So when we say it's a simple integration, we truly mean it. I think it's the first thing that your team said to you when you asked them for feedback.
Yeah.
Which was how fast the integration was.
Yeah, so it took one of our engineers, I think, 4 hours to get it up and running. And that included creating the different iterations of the tutorial.
Right, so
very
they
quick.
used a long tutorial and a short tutorial. So what happens is a request is made to Unity, and they say, hey, Unity, which tutorial do I give this specific player? Should I give this player the long tutorial or the short tutorial? We return a Boolean response, and they show the tutorial, and that's it.
Yeah.
So the integration is really simple. I think it was 80 engineering hours saved. Yes,
yeah. I was telling a story before that internally we have 3 different teams that work on 3 different products. The Shopkins team is sort of quarantined from the rest of the company in that regard. And so they were implementing the Tutorial Manager and seeing these results, is exactly like you see on the screen here. Meanwhile, another team had been rewriting the tutorial for the game that they had been working on, and someone had spent 2.5 months recreating that, re-architecting that. And we had an internal team meeting where the Shopkins team stood up and presented this to the rest of the company. And that engineer was just sitting there with his head in his hands like, oh my God, I could have, I've just wasted my life. If only this had been, if we'd been aware of this earlier. So it's definitely, the value is there. It speaks for itself.
Yeah, let's talk about some of these other metrics. So 22% increase in day one retention, and 38% increase in play time. So that's a 38% increase in the amount of time the players actually spent playing in the game. These are opportunities, to get more deeply engaged. In your case, there's no ads because this is a children's games, right?
No, so that's one of our secret secret sauce. So we do use rewarded, incentivized ads within our products. And in fact, we spend a lot of time working with ad partners to find content that's relevant for that audience. And we implement it in a way where the parents have a lot of control over what their kids can see,
cool.
Which is what's allowed us to succeed in a market that's notoriously very difficult to monetize. We're slightly off topic, but one of the things we realize is that kids have a lot of time, they don't have a lot of money. And so being able to monetize that. And we use Unity ads in that regard as well. They're one of our partners.
So would you say that you see an increase, because of average playtime increasing, you see an increase in lifetime value?
Definitely, yeah. The longer the sessions are, the more times they sort of engage in that economy loop. It gives them the more opportunity to watch an ad. And so we see that ad views increase as session times increase, which is great for us. It allows us to keep growing that product and putting more back into it. And yeah, so virtuous cycle.
I guess my next question is, what do you look forward most about next steps of Tutorial Manager? What would you like to see it do? What would you like to, what do you think the opportunity is for a tool like this?
I think the next steps is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the next step here is to sort of modularize the actual development of the tutorials. Because at the moment, we sort of are still hand-coding some of those steps.
Yeah.
But to be able to take those steps and wrap them in a module that could then be on the back end, you can change the order of them or change the length of them dynamically. I think that's sort of like the next step again, where we're kind of doing a sort of a more advanced A/B test at the moment. But again, we want to get those sample sizes down, like you say, to really tailor towards that particular user. And like I say, with our demographic, from a 6-year-old to a 9-year-old, there's quite a lot of difference in terms of the sort of what they can and can't do. So being able to, for the 9-year-old, give them a very quick experience, get them off, on their way. For the 6-year-olds, give them a bit more hand-holding and experiment with how much text is shown in each one.
Right. So to talk a little bit about the roadmap and what Phil was referring to, inside the Unity editor, we're introducing the concept of an adaptive component. These adaptive components are going to be bound to a decision engine backend, machine learning backend. And so all of these components can be moderated either manually or by the machine learning on the backend. They can also be updated remotely in the dashboard. So we're really looking forward to building out the feature set of the Tutorial Manager, and we're looking forward to having more customers. So we're currently in beta, but we are looking for people to sign up and test out the tool. We're looking for more feedback, and we're really, really excited about the early results. The proof is in the pudding. So 22% increase in retention. That's, in a way, $22 more that you can not put in the money fire in the backyard. So I want to invite Elie up to talk a little bit about personalizing content to drive retention using LiveTune.
Do you want to leave the chairs, or do you want? Okay.
Super exciting. Thank you, Lauren. Hi, everyone. My name is Elie. I'm a product manager for LiveTune. So we just saw how you can improve your retention by personalizing the onboarding experience in your game. So what I'd like to talk about now is how you can achieve incredible gains in retention and LTV if you optimize your playing experience. So what do I mean by playing experience? Basically, it's how your game looks like and how it feels, how it performs on all these devices out there that your users are using to play your game on. And this is a huge problem, also a huge opportunity. And I'm really excited to say that Unity now has a solution for it, and it's called LiveTune. LiveTune is the first LiveOps product that can help you achieve this optimal balance between performance and quality on every single device out there. We're really excited to tell you more about it today. And to kick us off, we're going to go straight into a demo, conceptual demo that's going to show you what a game looks like with and without LiveTune. So picture this. Let's imagine that you've built this amazing 3D third-person shooter game called Angry Bots. And you're really proud of the graphics in that game. You've put a lot of time and effort into nailing all the shadows, all the particle effects, all the rain effects, and you're so excited. You've even tested it on a couple of devices that were lying around, like the Pixel 2, for example, the iPhone X, and this is how it performs on these devices. So it's running pretty fluidly at 30 FPS, which is what you were hoping for. You're really happy about that. So now you upload the game to the app stores, and you can't wait to look at the reviews. And your marketing team has done a great job reaching out, promoting the game all over the world, and you're starting to see installs from different people with different set of devices. Now, some of these devices are the latest and greatest in the market, but others are go back to 2 or 3 years back and are not very capable. So this is where it gets interesting. And with us here, we have Ray, who's a big fan of shooting games, and he saw Angry Bots in the store. He got super excited, and he wanted to install it on his old Galaxy phone that his mom got him. So we're going to plug into Ray's device and find out how the experience looks like for him on his old Galaxy phone. So a lot of anticipation when the game starts, but oh my god, it's rendering like a slideshow. It's pretty much slower than this PowerPoint here. It's completely unplayable, completely broken, and even a few seconds of the game, Ray's completely disappointed. He's just going to give up at this point. He can't move further. He's on his way to put in a 1-star review for Angry Bots in the store. So huge wasted opportunity here. Now, what if this game had LiveTune integrated? Let's take a look at what that experience would have looked like after the device would have been tuned by LiveTune. And we're talking about the same device here. So let's switch LiveTune on, and you can see the difference. It's stunning. The game is rendering like butter. Experience is super smooth, super fluid. It's even going, up to more than 30 FPS. So we were able to get huge increases. We went from a completely broken, unplayable experience to a super fluid and responsive experience. And that's the kind of difference that we're talking about with LiveTune. Imagine this happening on every single device out there. This is what LiveTune does. So what we saw right now is just one example of a performance issue. And technically speaking, it's called frame drops or frame stuttering. So it's when the screen lags or getting a lot of these interruptions. They're really disruptive for the playing experience. But in reality, there's so many other performance issues that can affect your player engagement. For example, loading times are huge. And people get so sick and annoyed with these types of screens here. People hate to wait. Even more disruptive, crashes. You're being interrupted in the middle of your gameplay. It's so disruptive. And all in all these performance issues, they just hurt your game's retention. They hurt your game's LTV. And case in point, Google ran their numbers. They ran analysis on all the apps in the Play Store, and they found that more than 50% of 1-star reviews were related to performance issues. That's huge, and that's how big this problem is, and it's not an easy problem to solve, let me tell you. So what is the common thread behind all these performance issues? Why are they happening in the first place? Well, they wouldn't be happening if you're building for the Xbox, but in reality, on platforms like Android that are so fragmented, our data shows that there are more than 50,000 unique models just on Android to optimize for. This is completely mind-blowing. And you think about the testing, all the time that you put into QAing and testing before launch. You do it on 10, 20 devices. Even the biggest studios, they can only afford to do it on 30, 50 devices at most. This is 1,000 times more. So the strategy of testing before launch is not going to be enough to deal with such deep fragmentation. You need a tool that's going to react after launch. You need a tool that's going to optimize the experience for you as you're seeing more devices, as new devices are being launched in the market. And that's exactly what LiveTune does. LiveTune dynamically adjusts the content in your game and continuously optimizes the quality of that content to reach an optimal state of performance. So instead of delivering a one-size-fits-all static experience to all these devices out there, LiveTune allows you to create multiple levels of experience. And with that, you can scale your content into different levels of complexity, and we'll take care of matching every single device with the right level of content, the right level of complexity that will make it perform great. So I'd like to highlight one of our early adopters, Yoda1, which had huge success working with LiveTune, and we're really fortunate to have had them as an early adopter. So as you know, they're one of the biggest publishers in China. They're known for Crossy Roads, Rodeo Stampede. And Rodeo Stampede, if you're not familiar with the game, is a zoo builder and endless runner where you have a lot of animals, different types of animals, elephants, dinosaurs, and all these animals are running in a big cohort and crushing into each other. And that's a lot of effects, there's a lot of animations, there's a lot of characters in the same scene, so it's a pretty intense game. So as you know, the device market in China is super fragmented, and after adding a lot of content, they started running into performance issues with Rodeo Stampede. And that's when they found out about LiveTune. When these issues were starting to impact their retention, they were able to integrate LiveTune and to tweak all the settings that were impacting performance. So settings like the number of animals in the scene, settings like the texture quality, like the shadows that were on and off. They optimized for all these settings, and after running multiple tests and multiple iterations, they were able to cut down their loading times by more than 50%. They cut it down from 20 seconds to less than 10 seconds. So they not only saw increases in performance metrics, but most importantly, they were able to see a cumulative increase in retention across the whole funnel from day 1 to day 30. An average increase of 40%, ranging from 26% for day 1 to more than 50% on day 50. So we're really, really excited to share these results here today. And that goes to speak to the power of personalization and optimization when it comes to not just improving performance, but also driving more retention and more LTV in your game. So to sum it up, in terms of impact on LTV, Rodeo Stampede was able to increase their player lifetime, how long a player sticks in their game, by more than 17%. And in addition to that, the team saved more than 200 hours in engineering time because they didn't have to build their own platform to run all these optimizations. And they were able to use these 200 hours to ship even more beautiful content updates to Rodeo Stampede. So we've talked about the value of using personalized tools like LiveTune. So now I want to get a bit deeper in the product and show you how it works. So at the core of LiveTune is the process of tuning, and that's an iterative process. And with LiveTune, it consists of 3 major phases. The first one is configuring your content so that it's scalable, like we just saw before. And once you do that and you launch your game, we'll run a dynamic tuning process that will figure out what type of quality level to assign to each and every device. And you'll be able to keep an eye on that. And the third section is about really getting feedback on how that process is going and reviewing, what the next iteration should be. Do you want to run more tests? Do you want to optimize for more settings? Or do you want to call it a day and deploy that to all your users? So that's the process in a nutshell. So what I want to show you next is how easy it is to configure and get started with LiveTune. And that's done in 3 simple steps. First, you have to define these scalable quality levels, then set up the dynamic tuning rules, and last but not least, you're going to launch your app with an A/B test that's going to help you find out how effective your tuning strategy is. So let's get into the first step. And I'm going to use here Angry Bots as a sample project to show you concretely how easy it is to get set up. So we've talked about quality levels as how you scale your game from one experience to multiple tiers of complexity and quality. And in order to do that, you need to identify settings that you can tune in your game. So examples of these settings are things like asset with texture quality, or effects like particle effects or shadows or lights, rendering like level of detail, target FPS. So there's many effects or many settings that you can use, but for Angry Bots, we found after profiling that the most effective 4 things to turn on and off were the post-processing stack, the shadows, the PBR state, and the rain effect. So with these settings defined, we went ahead and created different tiers of quality for the game. So you can see that the highest tier here is level 4, and it has all these effects turned on. So this is the experience with all the bells and whistles. Level 1, however, on the opposite side, has everything off. So that's more the simple, rudimentary experience here. And everything else is in between. So why is this important? Well, basically, we could have created kind of a black box system that was going to change these effects on and off, but we really wanted to give the developer and the artist control over what the experience is going to look like and test that. So you're in complete control here in defining what every player is going to see, what they're seeing. And to build on that, the next step is even giving you more control into the tuning process. So the tuning process is automated, and that's why we call it dynamic tuning. Now, to give you a snapshot into how that works, the idea here is that we're using performance data from the device, real performance data coming from the device, to decide whether the experience is running in a performant manner or not, and based on that, dynamically adjust the quality. So, for example, let's say you have a device model that's currently at the high level, and you've defined the requirement for all devices to be between 23 and 28 FPS. That's your desired range of performance. So we're going to look at the actual performance for that device. So let's say it's at 12 right now. And it's going to be below the range. Because it's below the range, we're going to degrade the quality from high to medium on that device. So that's an example of how dynamic tuning works, and it works automatically. All you have to do is define these thresholds for when to degrade to lower quality and when to upgrade to higher quality. And you can do that here in our dynamic tuning section of the dashboard. So once you've done that, you pretty much wrapped up the configuration part on the server side. And the last step to finish the integration is to integrate the LiveTune package in your Unity project. And to walk us through, Ray is going to take over and walk us through that.
Thanks, Elie. Hey, guys. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the integration process looks like. And we've tried to make it as easy and simple as possible. So we've broken it down into 2 main steps. So the first step is going to be tracking your performance. More specifically, it's going to be tracking your FPS and your drop frames per second. And to do this, we implemented something called snapshots. So snapshots can be added into parts of your game where you think players might be experiencing a lot of performance issues, such as a scene with a lot of explosions or heavy particle effects, or maybe like a really beautiful boss fight that you spent countless hours crafting. You can also create something called time snapshots, and that can be used at times like, let's say, the beginning of your game. You can create a time snapshot for the first 30 seconds to ensure that your players have a great initial experience when they first launch the game. So once we've added these snapshots into the game, we can move on to step 2, which is fetching and applying the graphics settings. And to do that, all we have to do is invoke this LiveTune.init call, which takes in 4 parameters. The first one is going to be your current build version of the game. The second one is just a Boolean that lets us know if you want to store a cached configuration for the last set of quality settings delivered to that device. And we also take in a set of default quality settings just in case the device can't connect to the network or doesn't have a set of cached quality settings to fall back on. And then lastly, we have the callback. Now, the callback is where we actually apply the settings that the LiveTune service returns. So this is kind of what the callback for Angry Bots looks like. And you'll notice that the LiveTune service will return you a set of quality settings catered specifically for that device in the form of a string. In this case, we're calling it a settings JSON. So the first thing you're going to have to do is deserialize that string into a JSON object, and then just simply apply the values for each key in that object into your game. So in the Angry Bots example, with post-processing, shadows, environment PBR, and rain, we were able to tune it on our demo device and increase the FPS from 2 to 30. And that's all you have to do for integration. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to Elie, and he's going to talk to you a little bit more about what LiveTune will do for you after your game is launched.
Thanks, Ray. So on average, people spend about half a day integrating our plugin. So it's a really simple integration. So now that you've completed integration, the next step is to go live with LiveTune. And the big question is here is how are you going to know what kind of impact LiveTune is creating in your game? How are you going to know that the things that you're changing are actually moving the needle in the right direction, and how much? What kind of impact, on retention? What kind of impact on monetization are all these, optimizations going to lead to? So that's where we've integrated with the A/B testing framework in the analytics platform to give you exact scientific answers. So you'll be able to run a controlled experiment with the new configuration you want to test versus an old one that you're currently running. It's very simple to set this up. All you have to do is define which one is the configuration you want to test. So in our case, we've created the new configuration for Angry Bots, right? The one with the 4 levels of quality. So we want to test that one versus the current status quo with Angry Bots, which is just the one-size-fits-all experience. So you'll select the test configuration to be the one with LiveTune, and then you'll be able to choose how much you want to allocate traffic for each of these configurations, and finally hit the start button, and now you have an experiment that's running live in production across all your users. So to take us back to the iteration loop, the last step in the process is to review the results. And here's where maybe a few days after you launch the experiments, of course, depending on the size of your app, number of DAUs, you'll get results back that are going to be statistically significant, and you'll be able to measure the lift that you're seeing in terms of performance. So for example, here we jumped from 18 to 24 average FPS. That's a 33% lift. But not only that, you'll be able to see the lift for engagement metrics like daily playtime and also monetization metrics like ARPDAU. So you can define your success in however way you want. We'll be providing all these metrics. And if you have Unity IAP integrated, you'll get all these numbers out of the box. So that wraps up or concludes the tuning process with LiveTune. And at that point, you can iterate through the loop and run multiple tests, multiple optimizations. And here it's really about how far do you want to go? Like, what is your benchmark for success? Like, what are you shooting for? The process is pretty simple, as you saw. And once you do it, it'd be very easy to repeat it again. So we're in beta so far, and we have more than 50 customers who are using us at the moment, including Yoda One and Vizio. And we're really excited to expand our beta program to more customers. So there's 2 ways you can sign up for the beta. One is to follow this link. And the other way is we've put some paper forms and pens on your chairs here. So this is the old school way. You can just fill in your name, email, and we'll follow up with you. And we'll take it from there. So to wrap up or conclude this section, I want to recap how important the first-time experience and the playing experience are in influencing your retention and LTV. And we're really excited to launch 2 new products that address that. Tutorial Manager, which helps you personalize the onboarding experience, and LiveTune, which helps you achieve the best possible, most performant experience on every single device out there. With that, I'd like to invite Lauren back on stage, and we'd like to open it up to questions if you have anything you'd like to ask us.
Hi. Thank you for your time and for this. It's great. Quick question. You said that when it comes to tutorials, you can choose who to give the short tutorial to and who to give the long tutorial to. And since it's literally a first-time experience, how do you do that?
Yep. So I can give you a high-level overview of how we do that. But basically, we use user profiling of Unity data across the network, and we also use device information. So we look at other games that the player has played in the Unity ecosystem, and then we also look at the specifics of their device, their hardware, and their location.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hi. Thanks for your presentation. I have a question about the performance metrics you're using. You talked about FPS as a performance metrics. What other metrics can I use or are already implemented? I'm thinking of load times between scenes or memory usage on my device, for example. How much memory do I have left? How much did I use? Is it already possible?
Those are all very big ones. Currently, our product supports frame rates. We are releasing support for loading times next quarter. And we're adding, I think memory is the one that we hear a lot from developers. So that is definitely something that we're going to start working on and adding support. But the vision is to support an umbrella of performance metrics. We have a long list of things we want to add support for, like battery life, temperature on the device. These are all big ones too.
Thanks.
Okay.
Cool. Well, thank you all for your time. Appreciate it.